accidents or other accidents discover those accidents. It's not very possible to have that kind of disease. So I want us to study because we have much to look at today. Let's pray and we study together. Gracious Father, we thank you for this afternoon and evening as we come into your presence. May the study we have be a savor of life into life. Put your words in my mouth and use me as a vessel. For this we ask in the mighty name of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
So we want to look at the study of nutrition. And the reason why I decided on nutrition is I'll be mentioning other aspects of health in the new stuff. But this is the backbone of most of the problems we are having in the world today. And I think it will be very prudent if we understand what is God's will regarding nutrition. Yesterday we learned about the unique nature of the health message. Do you remember? And what was unique about the Adventist health message?
It came as a revelation from God.
From God,
It is linked to the spiritual life.
to the spiritual life
Has a philosophical and theological
approach to it.
It's not so much about its originality as it is about its unity.
Its unity, isn't it? Yeah. It's actually connected to the three angels' message. And it's part of finishing the work that we have with the world, isn't it? And you saw that without being the root of health, we cannot perfect Christian character, you know? And so it has to do with purifying the church and perfecting Christian character. Today we want to look at nutrition. And there are some statistics here that I want us to begin with. As we move forward, 12.6 million people have coronary heart disease. And I shared with you the other day that today you can't even be able to begin to count how many people are dying from stroke, others are having heart failure, and there are many people who are living with heart failure every day. I know that the main campus students, most of you are not doing medicine, isn't it? Medicine is in Chiroman and Kenneth. But one thing you need to understand is it's very hard to find someone above 50 years old who does not have a heart disease. 1.1 million people suffer from heart attack in a given what? In a given year. And if you look at it, 17 million people have diabetes. There's one I read the other day was saying 1.8 million people have diabetes every year. So meaning apart from the ones who already have it, how many are getting it every year? 1.9 million people are getting diabetes every year. Some people will be amputated because of it. Others will suffer kidney failures. Others will have blood vision and many other complications and a lot of bills and expenses in the hospital. But the diabetes can be reversed in just 3 weeks, you know. That is what we like to do on a daily basis, helping people understand how to come up with therapies that can reverse these sort of things. Diabetes is just a lifestyle condition. It cannot be treated medically, but it can be treated by changing lifestyle. It's possible. 90 to 95% of cases are type 2 diabetes associated with obesity and physical inactivity. Of course, the other one, 5% is type 1 diabetes, which is a result of a damaged pancreas that cannot produce insulin. So these people are always on insulin injections. 16 million people have prediabetes. What is prediabetes? It is a sugar level ranging between 8 and 12. If your sugar level ranges between that time, you're pre-diabetic. But if it's 12 and above, mostly that is already full-blown what? Diabetes. What is the normal range of sugar? Between around 3 and 7. So you find most people have this. And why would sugar be excess in your body? Have you heard of homeostasis? You remember studying it? Yes. The balance that is supposed to be in the system. And it applies to everything, minerals and all those things. So you need to understand that these are statistics that are present. 107,000 people are newly diagnosed with colon cancer every year. The leading cancer in women is breast. But now even prostate cancer in men is going high. Throat cancer is very high in men. 300,000 people suffer from hip fractures every year. And these hip fractures could be related to a condition we call osteoporosis. How many have heard of osteoporosis? Yeah, osteoporosis is brittle bones because of because of milk, of course. Because of calcium. Yeah, before we used to say, people used to think it is because people don't have enough calcium in the diet. But today we know it's not because of lack of calcium, it's calcium loss. Meaning that the real issue is that people are losing calcium. 50 million people have high blood pressure. Nearly 50 million adults ages 20 to 74, 27% of the population are obese. And that is why I think one of the days when you have a health expo here, you will have to look at your BMIs and figure out where you fall, isn't it? And more than 100 million adults, or 61% of adult population are obese or overweight. And you know, obesity is connected to every heart disease, connected to diabetes, it's connected to cancer. By the way, cancers are very difficult to manage, even naturally, when someone is obese. You get the point? So it's a really serious issue. But yesterday I covered with you, this is just a simple analysis of God's plan. And I want you to understand that this is the real issue behind God's plan. When you look at this side, we are talking about the natural remedies. They are found in Ministry of Healing 127. You remember we also saw counsel of diet and foods. You realize that we talk about bodily trust, isn't it? Open air, daily exercise, sunshine, and I told you these things are not things you learn in a health seminar. They're supposed to be a daily practice. By the way, knowledge without practice is very what? Very dangerous. I began to realize in my own life that I have to go for exercise every morning, or else nutrition will not be useful to me, or else I won't be able to manage stress and some other complications that I may find in the day. My lack of exercise determines how I respond to my wife. You get the point? When she asked me a question, maybe that I think these things affect character and how you do most of the things in the day. It calls me trust to be able to read the book of Matthew concerning the fact that do not worry about anything, what you eat or what you drink. Depends on how blood flows in your brain. These things are interconnected, open air. I remember in our house, we were always having this war. My wife doesn't like mosquitoes. And I don't like the absence of air. So it's always a struggle when you close all the windows and you open one. You get the point? Yeah. But the point is, at the end of the day, we need air. Despite the mosquitoes, of course. Sunshine, proper rest, lots of water, always temperate, and then we have nutrition there. But the objective of all these things is to make what? Good blood. And this good blood is equal to good health. By the way, health essentially is how good your blood is. So if we don't have good blood, we cannot have good health. So all these things that are addressing the issue of good health, and you can see there are passages in the Bible that talk about them. Genesis 2:17, open air, exercise, Genesis 2:15. They are all in the book of Genesis, by the way. God gave them before the fall. And they are the only ones that can be actually used to enable man to live a life that is. So good health brings sound mind and sound body. And a sound mind and a sound body, through the power of the Holy Spirit, we will have a perfect character. And in that way, we will live in the presence of a perfect God. We will be able to meet the crisis that is supposed to come. So the health message must be taught side by side with the gospel. It is not all about escaping these diseases, but it's all about looking at the concept that we are seeing there. So when you look at the issue about health, you'll realize that health is all about analyzing the body at the cellular level. Because the cell is the basic unit of life, essentially. And I understand there are some scientific researchers that say we have 100 trillion cells in an average adult. Others say we have 30 trillion cells. But each of these cells have needs that have to be met on a daily basis. One of them is oxygen, water, then nutrients is where we factor so much on nutrition. Then we have what we call waste, elimination, and then number 5, all poisons. By the way, whenever we manage therapies using the medical missionary approach, to those who need to know, these are the things we look for. We try to figure out, are you breathing sufficiently? What is your lung capacity? Are you getting enough oxygen and taking out enough carbon dioxide? If that is not the case, we'll have to induce some aerobic exercises to allow you to do that, because naturally that will affect your general health. The second thing is your intake of water. If we cannot get the water through your mouth, we have to do it through IV. But at the end of the day, the water is so essential in metabolism in the body. Nutrients. This is where we do juicing and other things. You heard of the juicing therapies and some of such stuff. The idea is that your body needs a lot of nutrients, and sometimes people don't understand nutrition. That is why we have to do this. Then we have waste elimination. We have 7 types of elimination in the body. We have the liver, the skin, the kidney, the lungs,
The bowels.
there is the colon, yeah? Yeah, that is the lungs. It's correct. That is essentially the lungs, and then we have the blood, and then we have the lymphatic system. You know, the spleen actually stores about a pint of blood. And usually when someone is anemic, by the way, you can increase their blood level by doing hot and cold of the spleen. You know that? Then the spleen can release some of that blood into the circulation. And that can help someone who is severely anemic and in need at the moment. That is an emergency therapy you can do for someone. Yes. But it takes it goes out for just some few hours. Then the spleen stores it again. Interesting how the body works. But at the same time, the spleen also is like a prison management system in the body where bad guys are taken care of. So, you know, the spleen has a lot of lymphocytes and some of those things. That is why when you have an infection, it swells a little due to inflammation. But the point is, all poisons must be kept out in the body to allow you to be able to live well. And that is why you realize that the Bible says the life of the flesh is in the what? It's in the blood. Cancers of health, page 93, we are told perfect health requires perfect circulation. By the way, on these 2 principles, that is what the health message is about. Perfect circulation. And then good blood. And that is why we are studying nutrition, by the way. So we need to understand that to understand nutrition, we must also understand that man was formed from the dust of the ground. And if man was formed from the dust of the ground, then the understanding we are having is our body is essentially dust. We are 65% oxygen, we are 18.5% carbon, we are 9.5% hydrogen, we are 3.2% nitrogen. This makes about 96% of us is essentially this 4. And then we have calcium 1.5, phosphorus 1%, potassium 0.4, sulfur 0.3, sodium 0.2, chlorine, magnesium, and all that. And then you have the trace minerals where you have chromium, cobalt, copper, fluorine, manganese, molybdenum, selenium, tin, vanadium, and zinc. And by the way, you realize we need all these things. And so if you look at this thing very well, what essentially makes the human body? These are just nutrients, isn't it? These are minerals. And essentially, where do you think they are found? Where are they found? Some of them are in the air, the oxygen, the nitrogen, and hydrogen, and the others are in the dust. They are in the dust. And so essentially, that is the reason why we even advocate for growing food organically, isn't it? A well-nourished soil will essentially provide essential amounts of magnesium, iron, carbon, phosphorus, chlorine, calcium, sodium, iodine, and zinc. And that is why we say nutrition is not just about the quantity of nutrients in food. The kind of education system we have to a large extent is dependent on the work. Nutrition is about growing food also. We are together. Because you may be eating food that has been grown, but does not have nutrients that are balanced. With the onset of GMOs and fertilizers, some food items have more a given nutrient than is required. There is no proper consolidation, and that is why organic farming is really recommended. But if you look at it, God did not want us to subsist on supplements from either the hospital or health shops. These things can be found essentially from the dust, and that is what makes a human being, because we are created of the what? We are actually composed of the elements. And so you need to understand that the health of the family is in the hands of the cook. And that is why we are told the spirit of prophecy that the woman occupies a position that is better than an engineer or anything else you can ever have, because they deal with your body actually. So due to that, we need to understand that we are actually what we eat. This doll has been made. What is used to make this doll? It's actually wire and some clothes. They are put together and then they're wrapped like that, and then they make the doll. What makes it? It's what you eat every day, isn't it? And that is so important. Food is needed to furnish the fuel to supply energy to the body, to all the carbohydrates, provide materials to repair and build tissues, all those proteins, to supply substances that act to regulate body processes that can be proteins also. But at the end of the day, we realize that we need these things on a daily basis. And the interesting thing, like I said, the cells are the ones that require fats, proteins, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, and water contained in our diet. By the way, you'll realize that these things are needed all the way to the DNA level. The DNA is composed of minerals and proteins and fat and all these things. And your DNA is the center of instruction that determines how your body is created through the RNAs and all the other things. So you realize that because of this, we need to understand how to develop menus, how to have a balanced diet. And menu balancing requires what? Skill. Many people in the church who claim they're vegetarians, they don't know what it actually means to be vegetarian. So the first thing you need to balance well your menu is knowledge. And that is what I'm giving you today. Get together. You need knowledge on what essentially these things are about. The second thing you need is money. Of course, as a student in school, you will need money to buy these things. I tell most people you budget for fee, you budget for clothing, you budget for school fees, but you don't budget for what you eat. You know, many families, they don't budget for what they eat in the month, but they have money for everything else. What is the first thing you need to budget for? It's food. Because you eat to live, isn't it? Yeah. Time is also needed. Most people are not able to eat well because they never have time to cook. They have time to study, they have time to go to work, they have time to do everything, but no time to do what? But if you don't have time to cook, you will never actually have a balanced diet. Because you're always rushing. That can affect you, you can be too busy to do it. Another thing is availability. Availability of both the individual and the food items. We cannot be eating things imported from the US, and there are things that are grown in Kenya. You get it? And that is why we tell most people, by the way, when you're coming up with a menu, come up with a menu that you can use in University of Nairobi. The things you need should be available from around you. It is not something that you have to cut your hands to be able to actually live by. Another thing is willingness. You can teach a health message, but someone is not willing to live by it. Willingness to apply these things is very important. So where does digestion begin? Where? No, you're wrong. Digestion begins in the brain. You get the point? The moment you see the food, or smell it, or taste it, or even the sound of it being prepared, already your body is taking and that is the reason why we actually have the tongue can differentiate how many flavors?
3,000.
Over 3,000 flavors. And that is the reason why food should be enjoyable. God has given us a tongue that can deal with variety. Another point is foods can become status symbols. Foods can become status symbols. This can interfere with good nutrition. And taste buds can also be educated. A person can learn to like new and different foods. If children don't like foods the first time they try them, then you need to reintroduce them later. Even you, the fact that I'm teaching this nutrition seminar does not mean that you will like everything. How many people tell me we don't like brown rice? The taste of it makes me want to eat. But you can learn, you get the point. You can prepare it in different ways. Even children can also be educated because it's all in the mind. That is why there are actually 7 basic classes of nutrients, and we want to look at them, the myths behind them, the truth that is found, and we will look at how to be able to balance them. So number 1 is carbohydrates. And from the very name you can see these are energy-giving foods, and we have fats and lipids. We have proteins, we have vitamins, we have minerals, we have fiber, and then we have water. Now, these 7 basic classes of nutrients are supposed to be provided on a daily basis. That is why I tell most people, health reform is not the lack of meat, or a lack of tea, or a lack of some of these things. It is actually the doing of what is right. Most of the time, we can dwell so much on the don'ts that we forget to give the body what it needs. And that is why we have something we call health reform. You heard of it? Yeah. You are not taking so much, but at the same time, there's nothing you're taking. So what is it? You're worse than the person who is taking the thing you stop taking. There should be a balance, and that is the balance we need to know. Energy-giving nutrients, only carbohydrates, fats, and proteins provide energy or calories, but the body's desired source of fuel is the most sustainable source of fuel for the body is carbohydrates. And that is why carbohydrates are actually turned into glucose, and we are able to use that. Protein and fats can be used later. Fats are usually used when carbohydrates run out, and that is what we do to diabetics. For the first 1 month when we are managing them, we put them on nearly 0 carbs, so that we can be able to empty the glycogen stores. You know, your body stores glucose into the glycogen stores, and then we can reduce the insulin requirements of the body. So the body can now begin breaking down the fats, and that is how people begin losing weight. But it's less economical as breaking carbohydrates. And then you have proteins. Proteins are the most uneconomical to break down, and that is what we call it starvation. You together. When your body begins to use your protein as a way of giving energy, then it means you are also producing a lot of acid, a lot of toxins, and at the same time, you are more liable to become sick. So that is why we need carbohydrates in the largest capacity every day. By the way, most nutritionists of our church claim that we need our diet 50 to 70% carbohydrates. Between 50 to what? 70%. And these carbohydrates have to fit a certain criteria. So carbohydrates are essentially some of the things, some of us need to learn. Carbohydrates can be found in the grains, and they are available in the cereals, potatoes, dried fruits. Most of the fruits also have carbohydrates. And one thing you learn about carbohydrates is that processing carbohydrates requires a lot of minerals and vitamins and enzymes. That is one thing people do not really understand, and that is why carbohydrates must be taken whole. But we're going to look at that when we move forward. Then we have the second category of fats. Most Seventh-day Adventists who are vegetarians don't usually take a lot of fats because they don't know that they need in their diet nuts, seeds, and olives. Most of the things we eat don't have sufficient amount of fat, and that is why part of our diet should be having this, and even the soybeans. So these are things that are needed, but I don't want to go ahead of myself. We're going to look at that also in depth. Then we have the proteins. And this picture you can tell is biased, isn't it? Yeah, because there are things that are not put here that you may be eating as protein. But you can see we have dried beans, we have peas, we have nuts also. We have whole grain cereals and breads. By the way, all grains have protein. I don't know if you're clear on that. It is just that the percentage of protein they have is different from legumes. And the percentage of protein that legumes have is different from nuts. If you do the scientific monitoring, you will find that grains have half the protein that legumes have, and legumes have half the protein that nuts have. Am I making sense? What I'm trying to say is that legumes have twice the protein that grains have. We are together. And nuts have twice the protein that legumes have. Making sense? So we need to understand that is the reason why we take them in different ranges. You cannot take nuts the same way you take grains. But to be able to eat everything, you have to combine them together so that you get the best. So there are also categories of herbs. Before I get into these things at length, I want us also to understand that there is an aspect called herbal medicine. You've heard of herbal medicine? Do you know herbs also essentially are part of nutrition in our way? Because we are supposed to use them to treat the body. We have those herbs that we call demulcents. They smoothen and they soften and they slow down. These are the ones that we use to slow down and smoothen the kind of your colon and your digestion. We have the bitter herbs. They loosen, they cleanse, and then they cause oxygenation. Those are some of the things that we do with natural remedies. We have astringents. These are they tone and tighten tissue. If someone, let me ask for example, if someone here stabs someone with a knife, and what will you get from your kitchen to stop the bleeding? You will need an astringent. Get together. And one of the best, someone has seen what?
So
One of the best you will ever find is cayenne pepper. You can just take cayenne pepper and stuff it in that bleeding place. It will trigger clotting immediately and stop the bleeding because it tightens the tissues and makes them contract. You get the point? Yeah, those are some of the things that you can be able to learn and do. Even if it's a large wound, that will help. Another thing that you can also do is grapefruit that has been mixed with Epsom salt. It can also plaster, and it can manage a wound to close up without even a stitch from the hospital, because it makes the tissues come together. How many have heard of comfrey? Is a herb called comfrey? Yeah, you know comfrey can stick your skin together and pull aside whatever is open. And that is why we don't use it in deep wounds, because it will close up the skin surface before the wound internally is healed. So there are herbs that can do that. Then we have the aromatics. You know the aromatics? These are the ones we call essential oils. We're together. Eucalyptus oil, lavender oil, and all those other oils. So they speed up, they stimulate, they're also very good painkillers. But we also have categories of food, I think we've spoken about that. We have tastes of the tongue, they're also four: sweet, sour, salty, and bitter, for a given reason. We have the five senses in four categories: taste, smell, and then see, touch, hear, and you see that all of them are making sense. And then we also have the concept of how the mind works. These things are all interconnected based on how we are supposed to fulfill. Sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell help us to know. And then doing is what our actions and our words are about. Feeling, these are also interconnected, but all these things are found in the heart, which is the mind. Our conscience, our beliefs, our needs, and our desires will determine our will and our choices, and this is where God comes in. You get the point? So we are holistic beings and we are integrated in one way or another. Causes of diseases essentially are poor circulation, I've said that, high fat diet, low fiber diet, and high protein diet. If I can summarize them, the things we are going to learn today, these are the four summaries that we can actually have. What makes diseases go away? Perfect. Circulation, low protein, low fat, high fiber. Is it difficult? Very easy. Those are the points that you need to always have in mind. Then also we have body areas. Circulation is the heart, blood, immune system, kidney, bladder, prostate, urinary, liver. I'm just going to give you some basic things you can have in mind. Colon, stomach, and intestine. So these are areas that require good circulation and good nutrition. Disease is caused by high fat, high protein, low fiber, and low fat, low pH diet. Heart diseases we have atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis we have stroke, angina, hypertension. Cancer we have AIDS, tumors, leukemia, arthritis, diabetes we have hypoglycemia, hepatitis, arthritis, constipation, polyps, and all this. They all come because of complications that arise from the issues we are having here. Now, there are points that I want us to look at right now, with the time we have, so that we can deal with the aspect of nutrition. By the end of it, I want you to be capable of coming up with a menu of your own, balancing it well, and using it in food. We are together. Yeah, I don't want you to wait and say I'll do it when I have a home and I have a wife. Your health begins now. And so you have to start now. Now we've seen why we have an increase in disease before, and I've shared it is because people are taking food that is high in animal fats, they are taking food that is high in unhealthy fats, that is saturated, hydrogenated, that is low in fiber, that is high in processed foods. Today we have KFC, we have all these things that people are taking today, and most of the time when you talk about health reform in nutrition, I don't know why we center so much on meat. But you realize that if you are taking anything that is low in fiber, that is highly processed, that is low in complex carbohydrates, that is low in plant-based foods, sooner or later, you will catch up with a chronic disease. You will catch up with a lifestyle disease, and you will shorten your lifespan sooner or later. And that is what people are doing on a normal basis. Then also they are high in animal fats, and then they take hydrogenated and saturated fats. Margarine. Why do you apply the blue band? Why?
Sweet.
As in, what is the science behind it? Those are questions you should ask. When you take sugar into coffee and you drink it in the morning, why? Why are you taking it?
It's advertised on
These are
TV.
some of the questions you need to ask yourself. Between an apple and a piece of meat, which is sweet? Apple. Then why are you taking the meat? No, those are very basic logical questions. But anyways, you need to ask yourself when you're taking anything. People are taking a lot of fat in the diet. By the way, biblically we were even told not to take fat or blood. It is all there in the Bible, Leviticus. But you realize that today people are into all this. By the way, a study found that women who ate most total fat increased their risk of breast cancer by 60%. And I will tell you, by the way, any woman who is on a high fat diet will most likely have fibroids at some point in their life, or they will develop endometriosis at some point in their life, or they will have a breast issue. It can either be just cancer of the breast or fibrocystic breast disease. And these things are actually attached to a high fat diet. To men, a high fat diet will trigger prostate cancer. And someone who already has high fat and is obese, managing cancer is very hard. For women, if you have breast cancer and you are having a lot of fat in your body, you know what happens? The fat feeds the cancer. So it becomes highly aggressive and it spreads very fast. But what do we take every day? How much fat do we eat on a normal basis? There is fat in the milk, there is fat in the meat, there is fat in the... And you know how much fat do we find in cheese and butter? It's quite a lot. But we take these on a normal basis. The other area where we have a big issue is the concept of protein. And most people do not actually know that most human beings take 2 to 3 times more protein than is recommended. Do you know that cow milk has 4 times more protein than mother's milk? But you see, the Creator was very wise in giving the cow 4 times more protein. Because the objective of God in the cow is muscular strength and body mass. I don't know if you're getting me. And God also knows that the cow will spend most of its time eating grass. You get the point? So as soon as they have obtained that muscular strength and mass, what happens? They are weaned. But human beings take cow milk all their life, which has 4 times more protein than mother's milk. What do you think they're doing at the end of the day? They are taking 2 to 3 times more protein than is recommended for them. And what are they going to do with that excess protein? Animal protein increases the risk of osteoporosis. By the way, if you didn't know, the more animal protein you take than your body can handle, the body has no reserve for storing protein. Because the body can't store protein, it will actually convert it to ammonia through deamination. You know that process? And then the ammonia combined with carbon dioxide makes urea. Meaning you have higher urea levels. And then remember, animal protein comes with purine, which becomes uric acid. At the same time, meaning you have a very acidic blood. Because the body cannot contain an acidic blood, it has to buffer that acid, isn't it? Do you know how it buffers the acid? It steals calcium from your bones to form calcium hydrogen bicarbonate, and that is how it buffers the acid. So the more protein you have in excess, what happens? The more calcium you lose. Many researchers that have been done have realized that people who are having a high protein diet lose a lot of calcium through the yolk. And that is the reason why we have a rise in osteoporosis. This is a journal on nutrition that shows that is why you find older people have brittle bones. Most people, old people, when they grow older, they can't stand upright because there's the spine, the bones on the back, the lumbar, the others, they are so weak that they twist. You get it? Akibeba kitu hivi anabaki. So you find a grandma walking lakini ako hivi. Why? The weight cannot be carried normally because the bones are so weak. And if something happens that they fall once, a fracture. You get the point? So these are some of the things you need to know. Why we are telling you, by the way, protein is over. What can I say? Over exaggerated. I don't know what the part about protein is, but you don't need that much protein. You get the point? You need exercise. And your body will be able to deal with most of these things. By the way, children 1 to 3 years need just 16 grams of protein. 4 to 6 years, 24 grams of protein per 100 grams. Children 7 to 10 years, 28 grams. Males 11 to 51, 46 to 65. Females 11 to 51, that is 46 to 50 grams. So we realize that we don't need that much protein as it has been taught. By the way, majority of people in the world, you know what the world is teaching lightly? They are saying we need about 120 per day. That is in so much excess. And that is the reason why we are having so many problems. By the way, high protein robust body of calcium, I've just told you this. In a controlled study, individuals were divided into 3 groups, each with different levels of protein. And all 3 groups consumed 1,400 milligrams of calcium per day. When you take that amount of calcium, what do you expect? Have strong bones, isn't it? Because it's going where? Into your bones. Now, when they gave this is how a normal bone looks like. This is when you have osteoporosis. Because calcium loses so much, your bones become porous. And then you begin losing. That's why they call it hyper. Yeah. The basis of it all is your system is losing nutrients even though you are taking them in large amounts. And that is so funny. So group 1 ate 1.2 grams of protein per day. How much did they lose? 70 milligrams of calcium daily from bone reserves. Group 2 ate 95 grams of protein per day. How much did they lose? 30 milligrams. Group 3 ate only 48 grams of protein per day and they gained. So are you seeing the more protein you eat, the more calcium you lose? But the recommendation that people are having in the world is above 120. So if these guys are only taking 142, so you can see this is where most people are. Because you're taking beans, you're taking milk, you're taking meat. What else are you taking? Jugu, what else are you taking? You're taking eggs. And when you go out there, they're telling you, oh, as vegetarian, you will not have enough protein. You need to get more what? More protein. And then you come back by the time you're growing older, your bones can't keep you up. Because it is not even science. So calcium loss from the exams per day. So group 1, you can see, they lost 70. This is 30. This one didn't lose. Instead, they gained, as you can see. The other thing, so that is just an issue of the protein subject. The second issue is refined and enriched foods. I know many of us here, but let me ask you, if you came to a meeting and on this side was brown rice, on this side white rice, let us be honest. I don't raise your hand. Okay, we are not making this anyway. How many will go for the white rice? Sincerely in their heart. We are not hiding anything. How many will go with love? So, you know that basic choice is determined whether you will have diabetes or not. That basic choice is determined whether you have a heart condition in the future. You know, a chronic condition or not. And then your children will carry the blame of trying to take care of you in all this. Because any refined and enriched food usually damages the body. By the way, most people take food that lacks fiber. Majority of vitamins and minerals are what? Are removed in the refining process. If you look at this, you'll realize that in any grain, we usually have what we call the bran, which is the source of fiber, and then we have the germ. Now, if you look at this, you'll realize that the endosperm is ideally starch. And that starch is not useful to the body unless it has the bran and the germ. The germ are the vitamins, minerals, and enzymes. The bran represents the fiber. The fiber is what makes sure that all carbohydrates can travel within your system within the sufficient or recommended transit time. You get the point? So that as long as your body is done processing it, it is removed. If it takes too long, fermentation sets in, and fermentation that is persistent will induce acidity, which eventually can trigger colon cancers and even stomach cancers. You're getting me? So because of this, food should not stay in your colon for too long. It should travel within the recommended time. And the only room that can allow that is Mr. Brown here. But you know, in Mr. White rice, it's not there. No. It is not there in the white flour, sifted wheat flour. It is not there in the cake. It is not there in most of the things we eat. And essentially, that is why people are getting sick, because their colons are so, they are constipated chronically, but they don't even know it. So even digestion is impaired over time. And remember, to process the starch, the body needs vitamins and minerals. If it cannot find them in the food you've eaten, it begins leaching it from your reserves. And that is why a high refined diet, usually you lose every time you take that soda. You're losing more vitamins, you're losing more minerals every time you take anything that is refined. Because to metabolize that thing, your body must exhaust your reserves. So eventually what will happen? You'll begin having deficiencies of vitamin C, deficiencies of the B complexes. Why? Because they are all being used to process the garbage that you're taking in. Is that the point?
Yes.
Making sense? So that is the reason why we have to realize this is very important. When we take food that is rich in fat, sugar, salt, and calories, make up over 60% of the typical diet that people do what? Are eating today. Example of refined foods are cornflakes. You find them in this supermarket. And you know, most people tend to think that because it is written hell of this food. You get the point? You take it home, you pour some milk into it, and you keep taking it. Then you have the Costco's, you have the enriched macaroni or spaghetti. And by the way, one thing you need to understand with spaghetti, there is brown spaghetti. Those who love spaghetti, you don't have to eat the white spaghetti. I eat spaghetti in my house, by the way. But there's a brown one. It's in Capo. Awesome. You can go there and you can find it. It's quite good. Then we have grits and pretzels. These are also just refined foods found in the majority of these supermarkets abroad. We have the white bread and the white rice. One thing I need you to understand, by the way, being health conscious means you also decide that you will not take anything that is refined. I tell most people that the only white thing we need is the righteousness of Christ and the righteousness of God. You need to eat a whole grain diet. Refined sugar lowers the immune system, and this is the reason why I'll just finish where it finds me. This is the reason why you find in families where children are given sodas, biscuits, cakes, what, people. You know these families where the kid is spoiled for good. And the parents think that they're doing that. They're just kids. Of course, if they're playing around, let them play, they're just kids. You don't have a problem. Yeah, if you don't have to make a kid an adult because you're one. Let them be, but don't let them be just kids in things that damage them. There's a limit in how your children should behave. So you find you give them a lot of this. What you're doing is you're lowering the immune system. By the way, a recent research from Loma was indicating that in families where children are given refined foods to eat, there will be high level of infections in the ear. They'll be having high levels of asthmatic attacks as they grow older, meaning asthma will actually be present. They'll be having more allergic reactions in their lives, which they don't even know why they're having in the first place. And most of them will have tonsillitis. You will even remove their tonsils sooner or later because they are always inflamed. Why is there so much infection? They'll always be having persistent cold. And some of them will develop eczema. You know eczema? Yeah, some of us call it eczema. It's this skin disease that is always there all the time. It's because the immune system is lower. By the way, did you know that if you take six tablespoons of sugar, actually the bacteria destroyed by the white blood cells is reducing. Before you took N, it was 14. When you check how many are reducing? By 4, isn't it? So if you look at this, you realize that the 300 ml soda contains 12 teaspoons by the way of sugar, meaning your white blood cell, the percentage decrease in how it fights infections is reduced by 60. When you take the big soda, which is about 25 teaspoons, it reduces it by, meaning someone who's taken that full bottle of soda, what is happening to the immune system? It has been destabilized. Research says this can go the whole day. Meaning what can happen to you on that day you took that soda and you bumped on COVID. Yeah. Yeah. COVID will not care whether you have a vaccine or not. You get the point at that point. It will deal with it. That is how I'm telling people. That sometimes we really need to realize, by the way, the immune system is based on our lifestyle choices every day. And to be honest with you, much of our immune response to many conditions we meet every day is largely non-specific. There is a large portion when it comes to memory that the body has when it comes to infectious diseases. But infectious diseases is not all about memory. The body is always quick on targeting anything that is a foreigner. The moment it discovers that you don't belong, it launches an attack. And that attack is based on the strength of the immune system. That is why we normally say the pathogenicity of a virus or a bacteria depends on the ability of the host to resist. What is the strength of a nation? The strength of your army, isn't it? You are either prepared or not. Or not prepared. And by the way, refined food lowers the immune system, and this opens the door to not just infectious diseases, but cancers and tumors that the natural killer cells could have destroyed. But because you're taking so much refined food, even the NK cells cannot be able to properly damage some of these tissues and remove them. And that is why the cancers are growing, and even children now have most of them. So essentially, where is the problem? It's not meat, majorly. It is refined what? Refined foods, which many Adventists tend to believe that is okay. You get the point? So you need to repent on eating that white rice. Amen?
Amen.
Yeah. And you need to be serious about it. Because it's affecting how your body is responding. Am I making sense? So meat and sugars in foods, by the way, most of the candies, one bar of candy, it can be any, because this is a nutritionist from abroad, they're using the ones they have abroad, but we can put the ones in Kenya here, we are together. One small bar has how many teaspoons of sugar? 5. Angel food, one piece have 5.5. Chocolate milk, 8 ounces, an ounce is 30 ml. So 8 times 30, 240 ml of chocolate milk. That is 5 to 6 what? Teaspoons. Milkshake, that is also 240, 10 to 12. Apple pie, 1 slice, 12 teaspoons. Any jelly, one tablespoon, that is 3 tablespoons of sugar. Ice cream, half a cup, 3. Sweet pickle, 1 large, 7.5. Cinnamon bun, that is 10.5. Donuts, 1 is 8. Cornflakes, 1 is 4.5. White bread, 1 slice, 3.5 of sugar.
One slice.
Isn't that serious? The conditions related to this kind of foods are heart disease, stroke, obesity, breast cancer, prostate cancer, diabetes, osteoporosis, sexual dysfunction. By the way, this is very common in men today. Any church I go to, whenever I'm teaching health, there'll always be an elder coming up to you or someone coming up to you telling you that they have a problem performing. And their wives are mad about it. But if you look at it all, it's all about what they're eating every day in the family. The foods they're eating are robbing them of zinc. By the way, one of the nutrients that men need to know is very essential for reproductive health in any man, both for the libido and also at the same time to protect you essentially, is zinc. And zinc is the first you lose essentially when you take refined foods. Zinc is like vitamin C. It's a mineral that is very delicate. And you need to have sources that bring it. It is not very common in many of the foods we eat. And that is why it's common in the seeds. Get together. Pumpkin seeds and the chia seeds and some of those, they have quite a large amount. Those are the nuts. But you need to know that these are some of the things that are affecting and impacting people. Diabetes mellitus, constipation, appendicitis, varicose veins, hiatus hernia, diverticulosis, hemorrhoids, bowel cancer, and all this are all about a low fiber diet. Meaning the food you're eating does not have sufficient room, because fiber is the one that binds cholesterol, acids excreted by the small intestine, preventing their absorption. Fiber is the one that allows you not to be overweight. I've always met people who are asking me, how can I lose weight? Losing weight does not mean you stop eating carbohydrates. Just eat and refine carbohydrates and you will lose weight. But that passed over your head. You heard what I say? You will not lose weight eating chipo. You will not lose weight taking sodas. You will not lose weight taking white rice. But the moment you begin taking unrefined foods, your body naturally will begin binding cholesterol that is in the intestine and sweeping it away so that it is not reabsorbed. In that way, your body will begin losing weight. That is why whenever we put anyone on a weight loss plan, we also put them on a colon cleansing plan. We increase the amount of fiber we give them by giving them foods that are high in fiber. By that, you realize in 1 week, someone loses 5 kilos. You get the point? That is how we help people who are obese. So they ask me, what is the secret? It is simple. More fiber, And then there's weight loss for someone who is obese. But this is supposed to be there. If adequate fiber is lacking, bile and cholesterol are reabsorbed in the blood stream, raising the blood cholesterol. It is only found in unrefined plants such as fruits, vegetables, grains, and nuts. It is not found in any what? Animal products. So animal products are linked to so many things, but I want us to look at some of them quite quickly. Then we go forward. So let's look at why meat and animal products are linked together. The first thing we have to say is that there is no animal product that has fiber. Milk has no fiber, meat has no fiber, eggs have no what? They have no fiber, they are high in fat. I told you that there is a correlation between fat, obesity, fat, cancers, fat, and even clumping of the red blood cells. It makes your brain more sluggish. People who take a lot of fat tend to perform poor in terms of intelligence, by the way. And a high fat diet also makes sure that your arteries are clogged due to atherosclerosis. The cholesterol is dumped in your blood. It is also high in protein, which means your bones become weaker and weaker due to calcium loss. You remember how we say it? It also contains bacteria and viruses, which will find an already weakened immune system. Interesting, isn't it? So what will they happen? It will ravage your system. And then we have it contains hormones. By the way, we are going to look at that issue of hormones. Majority of ladies today begin having their cycles at 10. Others at 11. Some even at 9. Now let me ask you, a 9-year-old, how do you handle that situation? Because kitambo, it was around 17 years. That is when it started. What is affecting people? Because we are highly taking food that is high in hormones, it is interfering with the hormones that most people have. And we can see this in the cycles of women. That is why we have high fibroids, and we also have a lot of breast cancers and tumors affecting women today. Many women do not have surgery, do not have delivery that is ideally normal, simply because of this. Do you know that, by the way, milk has 35 hormones that are foreign? And out of these 35 hormones that milk has, essentially most of them trigger growth. They trigger growth, meaning the more you take it, the more it induces growth of either benign tumors or malignant tumors in your body. There is one particular hormone found in milk called insulin-like growth hormone 1. Insulin-like growth hormone 1 is the one that makes the calf to grow so rapidly. Have you seen how calves grow? Now, we are told that if taken into the human body, it actually triggers proliferation of cells. Meaning, if there was a cancer that was dormant in your system, a high consumption of milk from the cow will trigger that cancer cell that was lying dormant to be promoted. It begins dividing rapidly. It now begins to metastasize into the system. And this is what milk does, apart from that. So are you seeing how they are high in hormones? Eggs have 52 hormones. You have that? So you can imagine why meat and animal products are linked to what? To disease. Essentially, these are some of the things that you have to put in mind. Cholesterol is found only in animal products. By the way, on the issue of cholesterol, you need to understand that cholesterol is supposed to be produced by the human body. Your body can take oils that you take in every day and convert it to cholesterol based on your needs. We don't need cholesterol in the diet. So when you take more cholesterol that is found in these animals that they were supposed to be using in their body, that excess cholesterol goes to the softer tissues of the body. It can go around your organs and form the visceral fat, essentially making those organs easily prone to attack by some of these conditions. If it is the heart may not be able to pump well. Secondly, it can go into the arteries, making your arteries to begin narrowing. Essentially, you will have a stroke one day, a heart attack one day, or you will begin having chronic hypertension. You get the point? Because of that high cholesterol. Fruits, vegetables, grains, and nuts contain no cholesterol. That is the reason why essentially our health message is vegetarian. But I know tomorrow I'll tackle vitamin B12 and some of those myths. We will look at them well. So cholesterol is very high in foods. Milk non-fat 1 cup contains 4 milligrams of cholesterol. There is low fat 2%, 18. Whole milk, ile ya kawaida it is 33 milligrams of cholesterol. Mayonnaise 8. Ice cream half a cup 29. Butter 1 tablespoon 31. Egg just 1. On the issue of eggs, in my experience, I have come across very young people who have hypertension that is consistent. Of course, most of the time you find they are stressed, but I realize from every case I have monitored, I always ask them if they take eggs. They tell me they have 2 packets in the room, and they take 2 every day. So you can imagine the amount of cholesterol that you're getting into your system. And essentially, how long do you think it will take before your arteries are clogged? You get the point? So these are some of the complications we have. Pork, beef, your liver content is quite high. These ones are majorly sea animals, crab, oyster, and the rest. But essentially, chicken breast, without skin, 82. Now this is with skin, 82. This is without skin, 73. So don't let someone tell you your chicken is better because it's white. That is what you always hear on chicken. So food sources of cholesterol: meat, poultry, and fish, 35%; egg yolk, 35%; cooking fats, we have butter, lard, and other fats, 6%; commercially baked goods, 8%; milk products, 16%. I think tomorrow we can begin looking at some other aspects. There's a lot that we may cover here. I want to also tackle vitamin B12, but I don't want to take you too far because we began early. Is there a question up to the point we reached? I'll take those two. Those 3. Yeah, I'll answer them and we just end.
Question on the cholesterol.
Yes.
I believe that the human body does not need a gluten because it converts fat to cholesterol and cheese.
Yeah.
So what's like the required amount for the same? I also do some maths.
The required amount that
that your body needs for cholesterol.
for cholesterol, like this is every day.
Yeah.
I think I may not be on point on that unless I get back to you on that tomorrow.
Okay.
But one thing we know is that most of the minerals that the body gets, if the body has enough, the extra will always cause damage. And that is the reason why you hear us say an excess of iron, even supplementation, usually causes inflammation in every tissue in the body. Iron is good, but your body can't handle an excess. The same thing with even vitamin B12. There is a research that was done recently. They realized that vitamin B12 is efficacious from read. The moment you take an excess, the body just stores it. It does not reflect in the serum or in the blood. You get the point? As much as you're adding, the same with vitamin C. The moment your body has enough, the rest in a wash. In the end, if you keep on taking those supplements, it goes out. But in cholesterol, because taking it out depends on fiber, most people who take more cholesterol also don't take a lot of fiber. So what happens? Liver and nitro do the bile, and then it is reabsorbed in the body and it goes into the softer tissue. So maybe tomorrow I can get back to you on the exact amount of cholesterol. But you know we need cholesterol for the brain, we need it for the nervous system, We need it for the functioning of the body and also for cushioning against cold. We are together. So that you are not easily prone. But I don't know the exact figure.
And a follow-up question was on, is there bad cholesterol? Is there good cholesterol?
Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah.
We're going to look at that tomorrow. LDL and HDL.
Yeah.
We will look at the difference between HDL, high density lipoproteins, and low density lipoproteins, and how they operate in the body. So I think we can look at that tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Maybe someone thinks if it's just about the quantity, I can ensure I take the one with the lowest.
From the ones we mentioned, I get you. We will look at the LDLs and the HDLs, and we will look at how they relate. By the way, LDLs have a bad reputation, but they are not bad. Tomorrow we will see that. So, there was one more question somewhere here.
You've partly answered my question on how can we reduce the amount of cholesterol. For instance, personally, I take a lot of eggs. So, in that sense, how will I reduce the amount of cholesterol?
That is already present in your food. Like I've said, number one, you need a high fat diet. And in your case, if it's already too high, you may need some things we call colonics. Colonics have no nutrient value, they are pure fiber. One of them is called psyllium husk. You heard of psyllium husk? You can find that mainly in some Indian shops. It's purely fiber. So when you mix it with water and you take every day, it increases the amount of fiber you have double. So meaning it ends up cleaning your what? Your colon. So you may have to take some fiber supplement. It has no nutritious value. Its main work is just to wash your water. That will lower your cholesterol. The second thing you need for cholesterol lowering is you need blood thinners. Garlic, for instance, is a blood thinner. It pulls cholesterol from the arteries and from the blood. So you need to be able to take garlic at least daily for some time. You can mix it raw with your food, or you can take it with onion by crushing it and making water. You know the concoction, the usual one, with some lemon. Lemon also lowers cholesterol. So you can put lemon, garlic, and ginger, and you can be taking that regularly. You'll find it will pull out the cholesterol. But don't use it for too long. Don't go beyond a month, because your blood may become too thin that you begin bleeding. Unaweza jikata hivi na unaona clot, because it thins the blood so much to that point. So another thing also that you may consider doing with high cholesterol is hot food bath. You heard of hot food bath? Yeah, hot food bath will help you lower the amount of cholesterol that you have in your body at the same time. But you need to stop taking the eggs. I'll talk about how to substitute the eggs and the milk tomorrow. There was one more question.
Yes. Most of the time that we consume white rice, we also consume beans alongside. Does beans make up for the, the lack of fiber that is not, for the lack of fiber that is in white rice, or even in white chapo? Like beans has a lot of fiber. Like that is the combination usually. It's beans for poor man. Beans is a staple. So does it make up for the absence of fiber in the white flour products?
I think I would have. There's a part of my presentation that I moved intentionally due to time issues, but I wanted to show you how the food combinations affect each other. You need to understand that the amount of fiber that is placed, the amount of fiber, minerals, vitamins, and everything that is placed in a packaged food like an apple or wheat is supposed to be taken whole. The body's mechanisms of breaking it down are in harmony with nature's laws. When you split them to the point you remove, essentially the fiber that was in the beans was for the beans. It will not essentially meet the needs of the rice that you brought in. You get the point? Mm-hmm. So the rice will become sticky and essentially will stain your digestive system. And that will make you constipated a lot of the time. Personally, before I embraced the health message fully, whenever I took white rice for just a week, I would have constipation after I switched. So you realize it has that effect. And by the way, those who take white rice for so long, you begin developing hemorrhoids. You know hemorrhoids? Pads. Yeah, especially if women, when you have your first child, you must always have it. And it's persistent simply because of that. So get the fiber for your white rice in your white rice. Let the beans deal with it.
Okay. The last question. There is something that I hear about lectins. They are anti-nutrients that may hinder absorption of minerals in the body. So how serious is the lectin problems? For example, the gluten in wheat.
That
Gluten.
gluten
Yes.
in wheat.
Yes.
Can we have time probably we talk about that? There's gluten and there's quite a lot that you can find not just in wheat. Gluten can be found in others. We also have the oxalates that also interfere with the absorption in the vegetables. But that is where we come in with the aspect of food combination. But with gluten, we need you to understand the wheat we are eating today is not the ordinary wheat that God created. It is tampered with, and that is why it is high in gluten. Wheat will affect those ones who have a weak gut. If someone has a weak gut, the wheat will essentially trigger a lot of allergic reactions, including eczema and the celiac disease. You've heard of it? That is common to people who are having a lot of wheat. But essentially, we need to understand, because the world has changed. You know how many GMOs you may be taking even in the fruits and vegetables today? Quite a lot. Do you know how much you may be taking in most of the things we have? What we need, like I say, we need to strengthen our system to deal with the excess sinfulness and garbage that is in the world. You know, even living a healthy life still does not mean that I am totally immune. I don't know which kind of water I drink in Nairobi. Yeah, I'm not very sure of the source of the foods, but essentially I should do the best I can. But I think we will look at gluten tomorrow. No, not tomorrow, the day before, and infectious diseases. When we'll be looking at asthma, and we'll be looking at allergies, and we'll be looking how they arise and they affect it. So I think that is the point we will look at the origin of gluten and the place they have in the absorption of nutrients. The same thing happens to casein, that is the milk protein, and the same thing happens to lactose, the milk sugar. They have an effect of hindering the absorption of nutrients, just like gluten. But you can look at that. There was one more question that I want to answer last, then we pray. So ready 23.
And there's one from the online platform.
Yes.
And someone is asking that what about our parents with livestock at home? What should we do with them?
Okay, I think that is a very good question. Usually I like comparing it. The decision that person will make will depend on how impacted they are with the health message and how much they care about their family and others. You can use your livestock for farming. Yeah, you can use them to do other things, but I won't recommend eating them for the things they have unless you are unable to obtain the substitutes that we will talk about tomorrow. You get the point? But if you come to a point where you are so convinced about the truth and you don't need them for farming, because you can use them for farming, by the way, they are very good for farming in all the essential aspects. If you don't use them for the farming aspect, then the question can be answered in the proverbial quest of a person running a bar. Yeah, you realize that drinking is wrong. What do you do with your bar? Yeah, it's like someone growing tea and coffee. You realize the effect it has. What do you do? Or maybe we talk to you, we preach to you about alcohol, and you're working in Kenya breweries. What do you do with your job? Someone told you that I'm an accountant, I only count their money. If you look at the setup, you're counting their money. How many homes have been broken? How many families are down the drain? So the question, that question depends on the experience of that individual. They can put it to use in farming. They can use them for other things. They can, at the same time, we can still use eggs sometimes in therapies, in some situations. So we need to look at this whole issue very soberly and based on the impact. But if the person realizes it's a temptation to live in his family, he can as well sell it. Get the point. But if you're selling them to that's right. We are praying. Heavenly Father, we thank you for what we've learned today. Give us the courage to implement and the willpower to obey you, knowing that you will guide and lead us. Those who made decisions tonight, may your peace, your love, and your joy fill their hearts, that their joy may be full. Lord, how we pray as we break off these as students, they're committed to be here, and I know tomorrow they will come again. Bless them in their studies, bless them in all the areas of their lives, and Lord, allow them to be back again tomorrow. For this we ask in the mighty name of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
God bless you for coming, and let's meet tomorrow.